Hey guys, got a lot of things going on out in the garage today, but I just got the score of a century today. Picked up a snowblower here, and really nothing too special about it. You know, it's a Craftsman 26-inch blower. The guy told me it is a 2010 model, and it's currently 2024 here, so it's got a little bit of age on it, but man, it's in good condition. The thing fires right up. And what I was told is the auger, it's slipping here. And guess what that is, okay? We've got the shear pins in here. All the shear pins are good, but there is a gear inside here, little transmission with a worm gear in there. So I've got to pop this thing apart, get that worm gear out of there, and get that bad boy replaced. So that is going to be my project. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to get off the easy way here. Took out the belt cover, and I think I have to split this thing apart. So I believe I have to remove these two bolts, and then there's two more on the other side, and then take off the drive belt and so forth, and this thing should come apart. Okay, I've got those bolts out of there, and this thing is wanting to come apart. Looks like I've got to take that belt off of there, and then there may be something else. Okay, but I've got this thing split apart here, and basically what I had to do was take this spring off of the pulley, I guess the tensioner for the auger belt here. Looking at the bearing here on this idler, looks pretty decent, and this belt over here, that looks pretty good. That's the main drive belt. So I think the next thing is I have to get this bolt off the flywheel to get that auger out of there. Okay, so that bolt did not like coming out of there. Looks like it's got some red Loctite on there, but basically that holds the flywheel on there for the auger. And here I have full access to this belt, and again, it looks in pretty decent shape. I don't see any cracks here, so really no need to replace it. There is an indexing plate on here that I'm going to remove, and then I think I should be able to get that shaft out of there. So that's really what I'm after. And again, holding the camera and working at the same time. Here we go. Okay, that was definitely it. The entire transmission and auger shaft is free now, and you can see got access here, and there's a bearing back there that feels pretty nice, so no problem there. All right, sweet. Okay guys, so sometimes you just can't take the easy way here, and I did have to disassemble this machine, and I'm going to start taking this stuff apart. All right, so here we have the transmission split apart, and here's the main gear. I don't know what side I have to take apart to get that gear off, but all of this is going to have to be taken apart and cleaned up. So I do have a little bit of a problem because one of the shear pins is bent. All right, I've got this thing all apart here. Got the augers off, the main shaft, and I've got the little transmission cases split there. There's a lot of bushings and stuff, but here's the shaft. That's going to get cleaned up and greased. All the augers are out, and I just want to show you the gear that I pulled out of here. So this is the culprit right here, and as you can see, there's like no teeth on this thing. There's a couple, but they're very shallow. And here's the rest of the gear. So there is I guess it's called a Woodruff key in there. You can see that, but and there are a couple of shim washers, one on each side of this gear, and I took those off. So this is the replacement gear. Amazon, $14, and I'm going to get one on order. Should have it in a couple days, and I'm going to put this thing back together. But for now, I'm just going to get this stuff all cleaned up and sorted so I know how it goes back together, and got a little bit of cleaning up to do here. All right, so the first thing I got to do is get this gear on this shaft, and there is a Woodruff key that goes in here, and the shaft or the gear slides over it. I am going to put some grease on here, and basically there's a few things of grease that I'm going to use here. This is just regular brake grease that I have laying around, so I'm going to use that on the impeller shaft, or on the shaft, and then in the transmission I'm going to use just some regular gear oil. I do have to seal up these halves, so I am going to use some gasket maker that I have lying around. This stuff works really well. It's for Suzuki motorcycles and vehicles. And when I did take this apart, there was silicone on here as the gasket, so that's what I'm going to use again. So let me get started with this, putting this gear on the shaft. You want to make sure that that gear gets over that Woodruff key properly. They can pop out, so I may have to get something on here. It's going. Just don't want it to go too far. I can see the lines on each side of that gear, so I think it's pretty good, or at least it's close. Ideally, you probably want to get equal distance on both sides. So I'm just going to pop it back that way a little bit. And that should be good. Okay, so now that I've got that gear on, there's a couple more things that have to happen here. So I've got my worm gear, and then there's some spacers and shims and more spacers that go onto this worm gear. There's also a pin that goes in there. So we're going to figure out how this goes together. And this part is also going to be, it's going to have the gear oil on it, so I'm not going to get too crazy with the grease right now. Just want to make sure that I've got this thing lubricated as I start to assemble it. And there is a seal here, and then looks like this thing goes around the pin. So we've got the pin, spacer, seal. And I'll put a little bit extra grease on there. Okay. And then these shims go on the outside of this shaft. So go ahead and put those on. All right, so here I've got the two halves of the transmission. And I am just going to put a little bit of grease in there. This side. And then the rest of the lubrication, it's going to come from the top here. There's actually a plug that goes in here, and that's where I'm going to put the gear oil in there. All right. So now we've got to figure out try to show what's going on here, if I can figure it out. Okay, so got that portion, and then here's where it could get a little bit messy. I'm gonna put that Suzuki gasket maker on here, and I want to be careful not to block my lubrication hole. This Suzuki gasket maker is great stuff. I've used it on a ton of projects. And the other thing is, when I put this together, I'm going to let this gasket maker cure probably for 24 hours, because I don't want to be putting any grease or gear oil in there when the gasket maker is still wet. Okay, so I think this is ready to put together. And there we go. So I just have to get a couple of screws in here. Beautifully. I don't feel any binding or anything like that, and Again, I'm gonna wait until the gasket maker cures to put the gear oil in there, but this is the plug. Okay, so remember to put the oil in there, and then I am going to use the grease to lube up both of these shafts before I put the augers back on there and the impeller, just so I don't get any rust. So this thing is pretty close. I just have to get the augers back on in the right orientation, get the shear pins in there. Actually, shear pins can go in after I put it back in the housing, but then the impeller, this has to go through the impeller, so I am going to do that work on the impeller first. So anyway, here's brand new transmission. Okay, this is going to get a little messy now because I want to get some grease on here, but I'm going to get this transmission greased up and get these the augers back on there. So just do it the old-fashioned way here. Okay, thankfully there are some parts diagrams here, and it shows the orientation of the spacers and grommets and so forth. So I will put it together like that, and there is also orientation on how those augers go in there as well. So I think I took them off left and right, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, first things first, it's calling for one of these and then one of these. Now, I kind of had these marked, so I put right middle, and I think this is the orientation they're supposed to go in. The other thing I'm going to do is just have my grease handy as I'm putting this all together, and just be pretty liberal with the grease on here, because it is not going to hurt if you put more grease on it. Okay, and that should go over that sleeve, and then we should get that hole for the shear pin to line up, and it does. All right, one of these, which makes sense, and then two of these guys, so we'll see if that makes sense. And then another one of these, and I believe that's going to go on like this, and see if it lines up with the hole for the shear pin, and it does. And then finally, we have the last one of these guys. And then my end cap or end washer is going to go in there. Put a little bit of grease on that. And that looks beautiful. So that side is ready to go, and now we just repeat on the other side. All right, I've got this auger together, and next thing's next. I'm going to get it down in the housing. So I do have everything greased up very well here, and I'm going to throw a little bit more grease on that input shaft here, or whatever it's called, but I want this to have plenty of grease on it because this will rust. And I did not fill the transmission up yet because again, I want to give that gasket maker a little chance to seal there, or to cure. Okay, I think I got it. Okay. Okay. All right. And this does go on like so. There are some flats on the shaft. Okay. And then finally the washer and the bolt. And this did come on a little hard. Looks like it's got some Loctite or something on it, so I may want to put some Loctite on there. It did have red thread locker on there, so I just want to make sure I put a little bit more something on here. So we will do the same, make sure it does not come off. All right, so now I'm going to marry up the auger and the motor housing. Okay, one thing, I've got to get the belt up over the motor. Okay, so this is all going to be a little Jenga challenging. Okay, so it does fit up over some guides, and just want to make sure that that belt tensioner isn't caught in there. All right, and then finally can get this belt up on there. Okay, it looks like things lined up pretty well there, and you can see I got the belt on there. My hand is just going to get in the way, but I've got to get the spring to actuate the belt tensioner. That has to go on, so that part is going to be a little challenging there. That belt tension is pretty good. Okay, so lastly, I can put the belt cover back on. Okay, last but not least, I want to fill up this transmission with gear oil. We will go with that. and then after some running, we can check that again. But all right, so we'll go ahead and fire this thing up now.